Hi everyone, and welcome to day 2 of Foundry's live event for Katana 5. To introduce myself quickly, I'm Ruth. I'm a creative specialist for Katana here at Foundry, and we're also going to be joined by Gary Jones, who is the product manager for lighting, and Ariel Martin, who is the associate product manager for Katana. And we're all going to be available after this session for a Q&A. Today, I'm going to show you some really exciting new features introduced to Katana 5, which help to streamline your workflows when working with multiple shots or entire sequences inside Katana. These features are collectively known as Foresight Plus, which is a development on the Foresight toolset, which was introduced in Katana 4. Now, Katana has always been a really great tool for multi-shot workflows, thanks to existing features including deferred loading in the scene graph, and its ability to set up scene variations using graph state variables. But with the introduction of Foresight Plus, this has got even easier, faster, and more artist-friendly, as you're not just able to work on an entire sequence at once, but you can now actually view multiple renders update live as you continue to make changes. This ability has a big impact on how you can tackle multi-shot scenes, as you can always be sure that any sequence level changes look consistent across all of your shots without needing to wait for any overnight renders. Foresight Plus ensures that you have complete control over what updates affect these simultaneous live renders, so you can freely switch between shots or frames without an update needing to be triggered. This is the second webinar in this series, the first being about the exciting new Nuke bridge. I will be touching on the Nuke bridge again in this demo to show how it can be utilized when lighting a multi-shot scene. But if you missed the presentation and would like to watch it, then we will be sharing links to all of these sessions. So let's take a look at a multi-shot scene that needs lighting. A quick overview of the setup here. We've brought in 5 shots, all through just one node. This is possible as each shot file references the characters, the environment, props, animation, and materials using a USD structure. And we can demonstrate this quickly by setting the view flag a little further down after some cleanup and turning on the RenderMan delegate in the viewer. This render delegate is new to 5.0 and it lets us preview our scene without having to set off render. So we can see that everything is here. All the materials and assignments have been brought in with the USD in. And as we switch between different shots again, we can get a good representation of the whole scene by using this delegate. So I'll turn the delegate off for now as we don't need it at the moment. And if we look inside the USD in parameters, in the file name, you'll see that we've used an expression to read in a different shot based on which graph state variable is selected. So as we switch between these shots, then the file name will update and a new shot is loaded. You may notice that we've used a new syntax here to access the shot variable. This is another addition to Katana 5 and is necessary when intending to utilize the Foresight Plus tools. I'll just pause here for a second to talk a little bit about graph state variables. They're in no way a new addition to this release of Katana, but they are an integral and powerful feature when working with any variations. They're the basis of multi-shot setups in Katana, and you'll see how quick and easy it is to switch between these different shots. And because we're loading a different file each time, our scene stays nice and lightweight. So let's finish looking through the node graph setup. We've brought in the groom through a live group setup to load the character's hair. Live groups are a really nice way to save out sections of your node network so they can be shared and reused multiple times across other projects or shows. Then we've applied some optimization by creating collections, pruning, and setting some PRMan object statements. Then we have a couple of variable-enabled group nodes containing some transformations for specific shots. And we then have a couple of variant select nodes for accessing material variations brought in with our USD files. And we've linked them to a graph state variable so we can switch between shirt types for both characters really easily inside Katana. We then have some material overrides using network material edit nodes to access the materials brought in with the USD assets. And finally, some render settings. Over here, I have an interactive render filters node. This is going to be really useful when I start lighting the scene, as I've set up some overrides such as a lower resolution, pruning the groom, turning off displacement, and so on. So I can choose any combination of these to help my preview and live renders run more quickly. So now that we've gone over how the scene is set up, I'm going to jump into setting up the lighting. So a common workflow for some studios and artists would be to set up one Gaffer 3 node for the sequence lighting. So I'll do that now, and I'll name it something relevant. And I want to make full use of the lighting tools provided inside Katana. So I'm going to rearrange my layout quickly, as I just want to be able to see my scene as much as possible in the viewer. And I'm going to dock the catalog on the left so that I can see my renders when I jump in full screen. But before I do that, I'm going to activate live render updates for all items in the scene graph so that I'm going to be able to see my lighting changes and I can be sure that I'm getting an accurate representation in my renders. And I'll also turn on some interactive render filters. So I'll prune the displacement and use a lower resolution to speed up the render times. And this will help me get the framework of the lighting placed really nice and quickly. Okay, so now I'm ready to start lighting the scene. And instead of lighting one shot at a time, I'm going to utilize the new Foresight Plus capabilities and start multiple live renders all at once. And this will help me get the sequence lights placed much more quickly and more in context of the entire scene. So I'm going to choose 3 shots for now. And I'm picking these shots because they each have quite different camera angles so that I can see multiple views of the scene and make sure that the lights are consistent across all of them. This Start Multiple Renders tool that I'm using is a really quick way of setting off these renders, and we can easily make selections of different graph state variable combinations. For now, I'll stick with these 3 shots and start these renders off. So now I have 3 live renders running, and they'll all be black to start with as there's no lights in the scene yet. So I'm going to switch over to perspective view and to a different shot with a bit more going on so I can start placing down some lights. Just going to make the catalogue images a little bit bigger so they can see them all. And I'll activate the lighting tools. And just to mention, even though we only have one Gaffer 3 node so far, by naming the node clearly, we can be sure to target the correct level when placing our lights, which will be more useful later on when we have many different Gaffer 3 nodes. This sequence is set in the evening, so the main light here is going to be from the television. I'm going to use a rectangular light for this, and a nice quick way that I can place this light is to position the perspective view roughly where I want the light to be, and then use the camera position button to place the light at this position. I can then use the keyboard shortcuts to scale and move the light into a more accurate position. That's a really nice way of placing a light there, especially when lighting multiple shots, as I don't necessarily want to light a particular object or character at this stage. And we can see all the live renders updating nicely. So I can see that I need to increase the exposure, which I can do really easily from the floating parameter widget. And at this point, it's fairly obvious that the shots are going to need individual tweaks to get the lighting looking consistent. Because of the camera angle, these shots are quite a lot darker than this one, and we're also losing the photo detail due to the reflection from the light. This is fine, we're going to be setting up those overrides a little later, but I'm going to get the rest of the sequence lighting mapped out first. So I'm just going to change the colour of the light to a more purpley blue to represent light from the television, and increase the exposure a little more. And once I'm fairly happy, I'm then ready to add a second light. And if I have a look at the environment, there's a window off to the side here. So I'm going to add a light that will replicate the moonlight coming through just a little. And for this light, I'm going to use shift click to place it in relation to the character's normal, as I think this is a good target for the light. Across the sequence, we have a couple of shots where this character or the papers here are the focus, so this is a good starting point for the light. And I'll just move the light around so it's positioned right outside the window, using those keyboard shortcuts again. And I'll give the light a blue tint to represent the moonlight. As I'm making these changes, sometimes it's easier to solo the light, so it's really clear what effect it's having on the sequence. And then once I'm happy, I can turn the other lights back on. So when placing down sequence lighting, personally I like to use perspective view initially, as I don't want to be too fixated on one shot, but it's really up to you however you prefer to work. You can look through the camera and use the monitor layer and switch between different shots as you place lights, so you can work more closely with the renders, or you can make use of the monitor tab if you prefer. There's a lot of different ways of working here, and there's really no right or wrong way. It's just whatever you find to be most efficient. So just to go back to the monitor layer for a second, you'll see that as I'm switching between the different renders from the catalogue, not only are the renders updating in the monitor layer, but the rest of my scene is also updating, including the geometry in the viewer and the graph state variables. This is another addition brought in with the Foresight Plus toolset called Sync to Project Settings. This tick box in the catalogue can be enabled to update global project settings, including all graph state variables and the current frame, to match the settings of the render selected in the front buffer, which is done by left-clicking. This is a really useful little feature, as it means you can always be sure you're working in the context of your renders, so you won't have any mismatches between the viewer and your render, especially when you're working with the monitor layer. So I'll make a few more changes to the lights, and I can look for a particular light to refine its position even more. And then I'm going to add one more light, which will represent the general light coming through the kitchen. This will brighten the background areas of some shots and bring some more depth overall. I'll switch shots, and I also want this light to point to the hero character on the carpet, as this is a central point for a few shots in the scene, so I think it will be a good starting position for the light. I use a rectangle light again and place the light in relation to the hero character. Scale it up and position it through the kitchen door. And that's looking about right. I give this light a warm orangey glow to replicate a light bulb, but also to bring some nice contrast to the different light sources in the sequence. I'll increase the exposure and use the various methods to position this light where I want. Working in a viewer like this gives a huge amount of variety between the different ways that you can position and move and refine your lighting. It's great to be able to combine the new tools with the more traditional workflows, as it gives you far more options and more control over your lighting. And through all of these changes, our live renders have been updating nicely and providing a really clear overview of the lighting throughout the sequence. So I've been able to make more informed changes based on the various camera angles. So now that I have the sequence lighting at a good level, I'm going to jump back to my node graph and set up some per camera angle overrides. Each live render that I have running has quite a different camera angle. As you'll remember, we intentionally picked shots that did. So I'm going to set up 3 more Gaffer 3 nodes and plug them into a variable switch. Then I'm going to reference the different shots for each one. The remaining 2 shots can be grouped with similar camera angles for now, but we will be making some per shot overrides in a moment as well. So now I can make some adjustments by inheriting the lights from the incoming scene into each Nuke F3. And then I can jump back full screen into the viewer so I can see my renders and start making some changes. And we can adopt lights for editing at this new level, all from within the viewer, so no need to jump out into the parameters. And we can start refining these shots. So shot 40 is looking a little too bright, as we noticed before, so I'm going to decrease the exposure and change the color ever so slightly so that it looks more visually cohesive with the other shots. And then I'm going to jump to shot 10 and decrease the exposure a little as well. And you may also have noticed that I'm making full use of the Sync to Project Settings feature. With this tick box checked, I can use the catalog entries to select a shot to target, and then everything else, including the targeted gaffer 3, will update to match. So I only actually have to make one click to jump from shot to shot to make these edits. And I can be sure that the edits are being applied on the correct level. This is such a big time saver, as you don't need to go in and manually change these settings. And you can also avoid accidentally making edits to lights in the wrong gaffer 3. It's one of those things that may seem small, but once you started using it, you'll notice a big difference in your experience working in Katana. I have it switched on the majority of the time now, and I've really noticed the difference when it's turned off. And as I'm making these per camera angle overrides, you'll notice that only the affected shots are updating with the changes. This is part of the new Foresight Plus work, as for each live render, the op chain is evaluated independently. So there's no unnecessary render updates, which allows you to work more efficiently with multiple shots. So as I'm switching between these shots and the graph state variable and viewer is updating, you may be wondering why the other live renders aren't updating to match the current graph state variable, and that they're actually only currently updating with sequence or camera angle level changes to the lighting. Well, this is because of another addition to Katana 5, which is the ability to pin parameters in the catalog. If we open this up and have a look, you'll see that next to each global parameter, so the frame and the graph state variable, we now have a tick box. And by default, when renders are set off using the Start Multiple Renders tool, these will all be ticked. This means that these parameters won't update for each render when the global settings are changed, until you unpin these. This adds a huge amount of control for artists, so you can have full control and really be aware of what triggers these live renders to update. And you can freely switch between different graph state variables and scrub through the timeline without triggering unnecessary updates. So I'll unpin the shot variable from this catalog entry so that I can switch to one of the other shots that we haven't seen rendered yet and just have a look how it's looking. And just see this now update as I've changed the graph state variable. A way that I quite like to work is to have one render with the shot unpinned so I can switch between different shots, one with the frame unpinned for a shot that has a range in the animation so that I can make sure the lighting is consistent across the full length of the timeline, and then one render where all the parameters are pinned. For example, a shot with a drastically different camera angle to the rest and not a lot of range throughout its length. So I just want to keep it in sight so that I can see how any lighting updates are affecting it. But again, this is just one way of working. These tools are really flexible, so you can find the way that works best for you. And I can now look at the other shot. And because my project settings are synced to the catalog entry, the frame is changed, causing an update. This is something to be aware of when using Sync to Project Settings and the pinning features. Make sure that you only have these parameters unpinned when you want these updates to happen, just so that you don't get slowed down by a lot of updates. So I'm going to make some more changes to the lighting and make sure it's looking good across both affected shots. And as I said before, I can scrub through the timeline, change the shot, and keep an eye on all of these variations within the scene. So there really shouldn't be any surprises in the renders later on. which is going to be a big time saver. And by doing this, I can see that these two shots, 20 and 41, with the same camera angle lighting overrides, need slightly different lighting refinements, as the changes that I'm making to one don't necessarily work for the other. So now would be a good time to go one level deeper with the lighting and make some shot-specific overrides. But just before I jump into that, I'm going to show you the other graph state variables we have set up here, as these can also be unpinned for one or multiple shots to experiment with different materials or other variations. So we have some different variations set up for each character's shirt type, and we can switch between these and see how they look with the lighting across multiple shots. At this stage, this may help to make a more informed decision about which variation should be used. So I just wanted to show you that quickly before moving on. But now I'm going to pin all these again. I've accidentally unpinned all of them there, so we will get an update. But now we can jump into the per shot overrides. So jumping back to the node graph, I set up these two gaffer 3s, which each affect 2 shots. So what I'm going to do is add a variable enable group to make specific changes to single shots. So I'll start with shot 41. And using this node, I'm going to target specific shots. And so any nodes within this group will only affect those specified shots. So we can add a gaffer 3 node inside. And I'll just name it something relevant. I'll also reference the shot graph state variable and shot 41 into the variable enable group. While I'm here, I'll name the other gaffer 3s too. And now jumping back to our lighting in the viewer, the gaffer 3 selection has automatically picked up the latest one, which is what we want. So now I can make specific edits to this shot without changing shot 20. I'll view a different frame and see how it's looking. I want to make sure that any reflection from the character's glasses doesn't block any of the detail at any point. So it's good to view a few different frames here. And once I'm happy here, I can switch to the other shot that we haven't worked on yet, which is shot 42, and create a variable enable group and gaffer 3 in the same way, and make some slight changes just to light the character's face a little more. So the aim here is to get the lighting to look consistent from one shot to another, but also to achieve the creative vision for the sequence as a whole. So sometimes we can use a little artistic license to achieve the desired look. So that's how we can set up lighting for multiple shots really quickly by combining existing Katana workflows with the powerful new Foresight Plus tools brought in with Katana 5. We've split the lighting into sequence, camera angle, and shot-specific nodes, so at any point you or other artists could jump in and make any changes. They could add new gaffer 3 nodes and inherit the lights from above, so any changes would be made to a separate node, and those changes can easily be undone if necessary. We can also make changes to the sequence lighting as a whole. This setup makes it really easy for multiple artists to work on the same sequence, and you can make use of Katana's live groups to split up the network and make it even easier to collaborate. So now that we've set up the lighting, we can make use of the Nuke bridge to see how our sequence looks with some grading applied. I'm going to load a Nuke script that applies a grade. And then I'll stop one of the live renders and start off live comps for the other two. To stack these live comps, I can use the new option, and then we can have multiple running at once. So now I can see the live renders after they've been passed through the Nuke script and had the grade applied. And I can continue making edits to the lighting while now working in the context of these Nuke composites for even more informed changes. So as you can see, as I make an edit, the live comp results update, and I'm just going to rearrange the catalog so we can clearly see all the renders and the comps. And something that I've only recently learned is that the catalog items can be rearranged by middle mouse clicking and dragging, which is really, really useful. So I'm going to use this to rearrange them so I can see the live renders underneath each live comp. And by using the pinning feature, I can switch between different shots and frames and have those changes reflected in the comped result. So you can see that you don't need to have loads of live renders running to view each shot while using the Nuke bridge. You can have just one render if you wanted to, and switch between the graph state variables and frames to get an idea of the grading or whatever other compositing process over multiple shots. We can also switch between other graph state variables like the shirt type and see how each variation looks in the context of this grade. So this is a really nice way of utilizing the Nuke bridge there. Alternatively, if I have a couple of different grade variations for this sequence, I can swap the Nuke script and plug in the same live render into both. So I'll just do that now. Now I can make lighting adjustments, switch between different graph state variables and frames, and see how both grades are looking. So all of this can now be done at this stage of the pipeline, which means that our lighting can be refined to a greater level much earlier on. And it's taken barely any time at all to set up this multi-shot lighting and place lights while seeing all of our changes across the entire sequence, rather than just a single shot. Thank you everyone for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed this session on multi-shot lighting with Foresight Plus, and I also hope that you're excited to try out these new features.